你现在说话，
Hello, hello. That's so cool.
所以这样子说话就是可以听到的。
All of us with our shirts and everyone in everyone in the class takes a group picture and then we're gonna make a LinkedIn post and say thank you so much, Sarah. First class ever.
Exactly. Do we just?
Can I introduce what's going on today?
Drum roll.
Yeah. Okay.
I missed the slide. I feel like I talk better, think better when I'm playing with the slide.
All right. Translation and communication students, thank you all for being here on time. It already feels like there's a lot of energy in the room. Wait, really?
Yes. Could you walk a little bit closer?
Oh my goodness. Okay. There's a lot of energy in the room, and there's a lot of other things going on in the room. Technology, who knows what's happening? But class suddenly feels very official. Maybe I should start by saying that if it's not obvious already, our guests today are recording, and I believe that only this intro will be recorded, and you will only be present in the recording if you say something or come up to the front of the room. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is everyone comfortable with that?
No, you're not in the way. The only, so in case if you want to see what it looks like, I think the only one who has I think your bag is in front, but it's okay. You could totally sit and.
Now people will know it's an audience because we can see the back of Sophia's head. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I would like to introduce our guests for class today. Our multi-part guest panel is sometimes known as Times Old Roman. Sometimes they are also known as Grace, Julie, Andrea, and Lucy. And amazing. Wow, they've got visuals to go along. So when I thought about teaching a class that had to do with translation, I thought about who are my experts, who are my guests, who can help us learn. And really, at CCA, we are surrounded by translators, people who are translating both in terms of art and design, but also with language every single day when they show up to school, or even come to the Bay Area. And so it felt really important that we have students or recent students be part of our class and part of the expertise in our class. So not just sitting in the chairs of students, but also teaching us about translation. So I'm so happy that we have this group of recent CCA graduates leading our workshop today. And I also want to say that we're lucky to have, I feel like I can't talk to you if I stand there. And Julie's like, Sarah's talking to me, but I can't see her, so I'm going to stand over here. The other thing I'm really grateful to have, not only the translation expertise, but also a group of students who are a little design collective. I don't know what they call themselves these days, but they are four students, former students, alumni, who work really well together. And this is something I've gotten to see behind the scenes as they prepared for this workshop, because they have designed a really special workshop for you today. And so I got to see their process of coming up with what that would look like. And I think in our class, on the first day of class, we asked, like, who likes group work? Who likes individual work? And a lot of people's answers were like, well, in certain groups, I like group work. But most of the time, I like individual group or work. And it's really delightful to have a group of four friends here who love working together and by working together can do more than they could do individually. It's great to have that presence in our room so we can also learn about collaboration from their lived experience. So thank you, Times Old Roman, for being here today. We're so happy to have you.
To start off, again, as Sarah said, we are recording this first section today, and you'll know why we're recording really, really soon. But I guess just to kind of introduce ourselves again, so you can match our name to ourselves, and also, I guess, because this class is about communication and translation, a little bit about what language we might be translating from in our brain. I'm Grace, and I speak Cantonese, Mandarin, and also English.
I am Julie, and I'm from Taiwan, and so I speak Mandarin and English and a little bit of Taiwanese.
I am Andrea. I am from Venezuela, so I speak Spanish and English. That's it.
Ooh, my name is Lucy. I'm from Vietnam, so I speak Vietnamese and English.
And a little bit of French.
Not really.
So we run a podcast called Times Over With. And this was started in our senior year thesis semester when we were in Sarah's class. And because it's a big class, so we had a lot of waiting time that we were bored with. So this is the start of that's how we started our podcast and kind of how we started as a quartet group. But yeah, you will be our audience, live audience today for our podcast episode. And this is our first time recording it like in video form. So you're all our test subject, and definitely one of our first experience of having live audience actually all looking at us. So yeah, but we'll do our intro.
Oh my God, okay. Yes, because we are a quartet. So.
So Roman. Okay, so during our podcast on like thesis class, we are actually just communicating a lot about our culture. We talked about our differences and like how we experience different rituals or just like festivals and different things. And so I think this is a really big part of documenting our conversation as well. That's why we also wanted to include you guys today as part of the conversation.
Yeah, and we think that it's very interesting that although we grew up in very different places, there's a lot of things that are very different about us, but then we still find a lot of things that are very similar about us, the way that we grew up, the way that we think. So despite language and geographical location, it's nice that we're still similar despite being so different.
Yeah, so that's why we started the podcast. And I think kind of the podcast is an important part of how we work. We document these kind of maybe random conversations that we have. But then after that, we kind of listen back to it. All of these conversations that we have on our podcast is unfiltered and unedited, by the way. So that's how you know that this is the truest that we could be to ourselves. And that's kind of activity kind of inspire us to work together more, and that's how we're here.
I'm gonna add that we kind of started the podcast as a joke. In the middle of thesis, we were just like talking. It was a 6-hour class, and it was a lot of waiting around, working on our projects, waiting to meet with the teachers. So we were just talking a lot of the time, and one day we were like, we're gonna record it and make a podcast, kind of joking, but then we did record it. And then the fact that we were there with everyone around us kind of like a live audience. People were just listening to us. I think the people around us is what made the podcast real. It wasn't us. It was kind of the influence of having people around us that made everything come to life. And that's just kind of what happens when you work with other people instead of working by yourself. Things happen. Like, I think when you're working alone, you can have so many ideas, but there's no one that holds you accountable to it. And when you're working with people, things happen. Things come to life, whether you want them or not. You know?
But on to the topic of our workshop and also the summer course, communication and translation. This episode will do kind of like a panel conversation style, which is different from what we usually do. We usually just cut each other off and speak over one another with no proper sound system or microphones. But you are all getting a special treat today, where we are much more organized. But I'll start off with the first question that's very fitted for this class and this topic. When we talk about the word language, what is the first image, sensation, or memory that comes to mind? Whoever that is interested in answering.
I grew up reading a lot of like absurdism and like a lot of absurd theater. Absurd theater, I think it's the way you say it. So something that's very important to me is the way of thinking that communication is futile. And no matter if you think of something, no matter how hard you try and explain what you're thinking, the other person's never really going to understand exactly the thing that you were thinking about. So that's something that I think a lot about when it comes to communication and language and translation. It's all of these feelings that are very raw, very human, all of these ideas that there's just no way that you can express them. And what's interesting, the more that you learn about language, is that there's so many languages that have words for feelings and thoughts and emotions that, or maybe experiences that are real to the human experience, but sometimes the other language just doesn't have it. So I think that what's interesting to me about language is the gaps within it, you know?
When I think about language, the word language, and one of the first kind of imagery or like one of the first memory I have, like a concept of language, I feel like is when I was listening to my grandpa speak, and well, not exactly when I was listening to him speak, but actually when I realized how different his accent in Chinese and Mandarin is because of the dialect that he speaks from his cultural background, because I grew up in southern China in a city called Guangzhou where we speak Cantonese, but he is from another province that doesn't speak this dialect. But from living in Guangzhou for a while, the dialect that he has in Mandarin and also the Cantonese dialect kind of mixing together, this mix of different languages and different pronunciation kind of change a lot of the ways that he speaks certain words in Chinese. And then I learned it from him because, you know, when I was young and, you know, being taken after by your grandparents, you kind of just imitate how they talk. And when I spoke in like the way that he spoke to my other friends, they were like, oh, why do you have this strange accent? That was when I realized even when you speak the same language, different accent, different pronunciation could be influenced by many different factors. And even if you were in this one city, this different regional kind of cultural influences, that is the kind of aftermath of both globalization and also people just moving to cities to work and everything. I find that very interesting about language. I
have something I'd like to add to that. in my country, there's been a lot of like immigration. So a lot of times, like I go to another country to visit family or like friends and friends of family and family of friends. And something that's happened a lot is you meet kids that talk like old people. Because sometimes there's a lot of slang and a lot of terms that are very specific to time. So sometimes you talk to these kids and you're just, suddenly they go, to translate it to English, they go, that's the bomb.com. And you're like, what do you mean? And there's something really strange about culture happening outside of you. You know, these traditions and slang and just these things that belong to someone else belonging to new people that's interesting with the separation of like immigration and it's just cute to see the way that culture lives on without a place to ground it, you know? That's kind of romantic in a way. So.
Yeah, so one of the first things that come to mind when I think of languages, I think this is already obvious, but I didn't always speak English. So definitely had to learn it when I was growing up. And I would remember when I was 5 was when I started learning English. And well, at 5, you don't really know what languages are. So when people try to teach it to me, I remember my parents were like trying to teach me the word banana. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? But I just kind of like learned it very mechanically, just like trying to memorize things, but it didn't really work out for me, and I was really bad at English. And my parents decided that they're gonna send me to English tutoring after school. So I was like, every week for 3 hours of after class, I would go to my tutor's place. And the way that the class worked was that my tutor believed that you kind of have to learn all of the vocabulary first before you learn the grammar, because without the vocabulary, people cannot know what you're saying. So the way that she had us learn these words, each of us would have like a laptop, and there were like 30 kids under the age of 10 in the same small room, like half the size of this room, and we would all be typing on a computer. So it was kind of like a child labor situation, if you look at it without any context. It's just a bunch of kids typing on their laptop. So yeah, that's kind of how I learned English. But then I feel like I didn't enjoy that at all. But I feel like I've grown to enjoy it more the more that I talked with people who speak English. And I feel like it's just so magical that I get to know all of these people. I get to know all of you guys by speaking English. And through that, I feel like languages was like a bridge for me to go see more things and learn more things. So it's kind of like a mode of transportation in a way, so that you can travel more and you know more cultural values and places and people and feelings and thoughts. So yeah, it's kind of magical to think about it.
Lucy, you are beautiful.
Do you want to? You don't have to answer if you don't want.
I mean, I can. For me, at first, I feel like language, when I was really younger, like Lucy, it was more of just visuals and tones. I was just trying to mimic whatever I, like, when you're learning what a banana is, you would see the banana, and the parents will tell you, this is a banana, and you learn that instead of actually understanding, like, other contexts of it. And then I feel like same with the writing, like Chinese, like you just learn the word itself and then slowly learn the meaning of it. And I feel like growing up learning language is kind of like that, no matter if it's Chinese or English. And But now, like, coming to college and meeting so many different people from different places, like, I've started learning Korean because my partner is Korean, and then a lot of our friends in graphic design are Korean. So we started just, like, having conversation, and I'm just interested in talking more and, like, learning little frames or words that is part of their culture, or like I just saw it on TV and I'm like, oh, this word I learned, and trying to use it when I'm having a conversation with them. And so I think it slowly became something that I want to be part of because I'm close to someone. So I thought that was like, that's the shift I feel with language.
Yeah. Talking about the different language kind of you encounter in life. The next question is, can you describe the language ecosystem that you grew up in and what language you dream in now? What did you gain? What did you lose as you move into other language environment? I guess I'll start. The language ecosystem that I grew up in was predominantly Chinese, and within the Chinese language, it was a mix of Mandarin and Cantonese. But eventually, I was in an education system where I was predominantly taught in English as the first language. And I feel like this ecosystem of like the mix of all these different languages led to a result of me speaking pretty fluently in English, but then it also led to my kind of deficiency in Chinese writing and Chinese reading, where I'm able to communicate like a native Chinese speaker, but also at the same time, because I wasn't in an education system where I was reading and writing Chinese every day, I wasn't as fluent in it. But also because the school I was in is in China, so even though I was taught in English, I still am immersed in this Chinese environment with like the things I see in life, the restaurant, the menus, the kind of people that are around me. So in a way, my English is not fully fluent as well. There's a lot of words in my head that I can't fully express in English, and then I will have to exchange that in Chinese. So it's really interesting in terms of like that ecosystem where you feel like nothing is your fully mother tongue experience. But that has definitely like kind of changed as I came over here for school, for college. I feel like what I understood as a multilingual speaker, what I gained that people, compared to people who only speaks one language, is that I feel like I have a bigger world that I could appreciate because of the different language I'm able to have a level of understanding. Similar to what Julie was talking about, our Korean friends and the Korean design culture that we're really interested into. Because I am open to learning new languages, that's one thing that I've definitely gained. But I guess what I lose is definitely the idea of like, what is the language that I'm most familiar with? I currently, I'll lean towards Chinese, but sometimes I might dream in English. It's like, and when I talk to my friends who speaks both Chinese and English, my conversation is also a mix of both languages. So it's kind of like a lot of mixed feelings.
You don't want it? I can answer. I grew up in speaking Spanish. My parents speak Spanish, and I went to an English school. So obviously primary, before primary, it was all in Spanish because we're babies. And they would teach us like a few words in English every week or so. And then for like primary and middle school, my school day would be split in two. So like the first half was Spanish and then the second half of the day was English. So I would be seeing math in Spanish and then math in English again. And then like grammar in English and then grammar in Spanish again. And like history and science, I would be seeing everything in these two languages. So it really kind of enforced the two different sides of the brain at the same time forever. But I hated speaking in English. Like, there was something so awful about me having to try, as a child, try to say what I was thinking in a language that I don't know, and then teachers being like, I don't know what you mean. What? Say it in English. What are you saying? Baño? I don't know what that is. How do you say? It's like, oh my God, I just need to pee. I'm 7. I need to go to the bathroom. It's awful. So I was really embarrassed to speak English for a really long time. I remember I still do. I love watching TV. I watched a lot of TV, and then my parents at home, they would not let me see anything in Spanish. And I would get so mad whenever they switched the language to English. I just wouldn't watch it. I would go and color and do something else. I just hated thinking or speaking in English. And then they put me in after-school classes where they would help me with my homework, and it was all in English. And now I feel like I mostly think in English. I feel like there's so much media. Everything that I consume essentially is in English. And that's definitely reinforced in my dreams. I definitely dream in both English and Spanish. And sometimes I even dream in music. I dream in whatever. My dreams are very strong, too. I feel like I have very lucid dreams. I always remember them. But yeah, I think in my brain is 100% Spanish and also 100% English. So if you know math, that doesn't make sense. So that means that they're neither or. I feel like the more English I learn, the worse my Spanish gets. The more Spanish I speak, the worse my grammar gets in English. I think that there's a constant battle between these two worlds inside me. There are two wolves, and I can't do it, Something that's also interesting, because I really do think that my brain is split into these two people, and they're two very different people, I feel like I am better at small talk in Spanish. I can meet someone and be like, oh my God, how was your day? Oh, that's so lovely. I love speaking to old people in Spanish because I'm just like, God bless you. And they love it because you get to throw all of these Christian things at them, and they're like, oh, you're such a good child. And you can't do that in English. You can't just be like, amen. You can't just say that. You can't just say that. And then in English, I think that I'm funnier in English. I feel like I'm a better friend in English. So I really do feel like there's two people in me, and they don't speak the same language, but they're the same at heart.
That is crazy. I feel like I'm so much better at small talk in English because I feel like the small talk culture is not really existing in East Asian culture. So it's very strange when I approach someone in China. I'd be like, oh my God, your outfit is so cute today. And they'll look at me confused. But then over here, it's so normal. And so I feel like part of it is the cultural context of the language. And then I'm really bad at small talk in Chinese.
The thing is that Spanish is 100% small talk and gossip. And if you're brave enough, gossip is also small talk. So, but then going deep into something, I feel like there's also something, I feel like I think this is one of the later questions, but Spanish is also so much more emotional. Whenever I'm confessing something or opening up to someone, I'm doing it in English because it's not real, if it's I am so mad at what you did. I can't believe you would break my heart. If you say that in Spanish, you mean it. If you're saying it in English, you're acting, it's a movie, it's Hollywood, it's a drama, and it doesn't hit your emotions in the same way. There's something more honest about speaking in Spanish, and I kind of avoid it because it just feels too real. If I'm telling you something from the soul, it's coming in English because I don't want it to be so. I don't want to be so raw, you know. Oh. Anyways.
No, but I feel like Chinese is so polite. Like you have to speak so polite compared to English. So I feel like it's really hard to have more difficult conversations or like just be more direct. When I'm speaking English, I'm a lot more direct with what I think and what I guess what I'm trying to communicate. And when I'm speaking Chinese, I'm kind of curving my ball and saying, maybe I can't do this, which means I can't. Or like, oh, I think that might be a little bit hard in Chinese, and that means I can't. So it's really interesting to think about language like that.
Yeah.
So what was the question again? Ecosystem?
It was
What do you dream in?
Oh.
And dream
Yeah. Okay.
what you gain.
Yeah, I definitely grew up in Vietnamese. Like, I grew up in Vietnam and everybody speaks Vietnamese. But fun fact, my parents both speak French. And sadly, I do not. Like, they just decided that this girl is going to learn English because it was more popular back in the days, whatever. But yeah, growing up feels a little bit like I was an outsider in my own house because my parents would sometimes speak French to each other and I don't understand what they mean. And my sister also speaks French, so it's like, what are these people on about? But then in school, I also learned in Vietnamese, actually. English was never actually that present in kind of school. I think for me, it was more present like online. I learned English definitely also by kind of watching TV and just like social media and like TikTok. Yeah, so I feel like English for me has like a very different vibes than Vietnamese. I feel like, yeah, I really resonate to what you said about saying things in English is not real. Like it's all just on social media, it's fake, you know. I cannot say I love you in Vietnamese. No, it feels kind of cringe. But in English, it's easy. It just comes to you, you know.
It's Valentine's Day. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's little hearts and candy. You know, I love you.
I love you. It's really easy to say things in English. But yeah, and then also I feel like because I mostly learned English in school, I'm like actually more polite in English. Because it's like you learn it in school and they only teach you the good words. Like you don't get taught swear words versus like your mother tongue when you're just like on the streets with your friends and like the adults are like swearing at you and you're just like, that's what I should say when I'm an adult. So yeah.
Well, a lot of the languages, in terms of English especially, I feel like the primary format of learning was through school. But what is your motivation to learn a new language other than your mother tongue? And I guess other than English, since English has such a, the education part in it. And what were the challenges or what made it easy to learn certain languages?
Watching TV shows. Like, I grew up watching so much anime that I kind of understand a little bit of Japanese now. And then later on, like, just friends and, like I said, I wanted to learn Korean because, like, going to Korea trip, like, 3 summers ago, and then having a lot of friends that are Korean and K-drama and those reality shows, just, you just want to know what the heck they're talking about.
I am not really trying to learn a new language at the moment. I just remember how hard it was to learn English, and I don't know, because I feel like I'm really bad at learning languages. I tried learning French, and I found out that poison and fish sound the same. And I was like, this is not for me. This is not for me. I'm also lazy. Like, if I don't pronounce the C just because I don't want to, I think it's a stupid letter and I refuse to give it the attention it requires. So That's why I can't learn languages, because at least that's why I can't learn French, because everything requires attention and you're not that cool. You know, I'm not, no. Poisson? Poisson. Same thing. I can't pronounce it. Maybe if you hear a French person say it, you'll see it, but I do think Friends and TV are the reason you want to learn languages, and I think, and food, bro. I am actually trying to learn Italian. Look at that. I had a 30-day streak in Duolingo like a month ago, so that's my extent of trying. And if you know Duolingo recently, 30 days actually means like.
Ask Julie.
Oh my god.
What's your streak?
Oh yeah. Oh, Duolingo, guys. Checking. 1, 2.
1,333 days.
Say it again.
1,333 days.
But Julie
For
still
Korean.
can't hold full conversation in Korean.
That's true.
That's because Duolingo doesn't work. Unless you guys want to hire me. If you guys want to hire me, you guys are great for language learning.
Yeah. I recently tried to learn Chinese Mandarin, but the reason that I started learning it was a little bit different because I got to the States. And I feel like in the first month I was here, when I'm in the studio or like go to school or something, a lot of Chinese people randomly come up to me and start talking in Chinese. And I'm like, sorry, I'm not Chinese. But then I just feel like maybe if I start speaking Chinese, I could eavesdrop all of these conversations and I could fake being Chinese. And I wonder how long I could keep pretending to be Chinese. And that's an interesting experiment to think about. So I started learning Chinese, but I feel like I keep learning it because I definitely have a lot of friends who speak Chinese and I want to eavesdrop them without them knowing. Sometimes I do that to you guys. Yeah, and the other reason I think I keep learning because Chinese has like a very strong influence on the Vietnamese culture. And it's just really interesting to see how the cultural values kind of blend together. But there are still like unique things about each of them. Because like Vietnamese, previously the language writing system was Chinese, like traditional writing, and then the language kind of developed its own writing system, and then because we were colonized, turned into Latin. So it was like a really interesting thing to see how words were kind of maybe originally in Chinese and then translating to Vietnamese. Maybe it could add more meanings or lose meanings, but the pronunciation is like still kind of the same. And we have like a system that's called Sino-Vietnamese, which is just like Chinese words but pronounced in Vietnamese. And sometimes they have meaning and sometimes they don't. So it's a really interesting kind of vocabulary system that you could go into and you could like research. But I'm not that good at it, so I cannot tell you more about it.
Something that made me want to, because I do think an important part of learning a language is to want to. Because a lot of countries, you're just forced to learn English, and then you just kind of learn to the extent that you're interested in learning. I have a cousin who's been learning English his whole life, and he just doesn't see the use of speaking English because he has no plans of leaving the country at all, like not even for vacation, nothing. He just says, I don't need English. But for me, I think something that was important for at least like prepubescent Andrea was, I feel like there's more of, I didn't find myself in Hispanic culture. I didn't find myself represented. I not, at least not with popular culture back home. I didn't see myself in it, but I did find myself in a lot of English pop culture. So consuming this media made me feel more represented. It made me feel like it was okay to be who I was because of the way Americans want to be, you know? Like watching Doctor Who, you're like, that's so fun, you know, these aren't things that I would find in Spanish media. Obviously, I know that there is a lot of media out there that is in Spanish that does touch on these themes that were more me, but it was more effort to find them. Whereas I feel like in the United States, people are more free to be whoever they want to be, and that's more popularly seen. So like I would watch interviews, I would watch TV shows, I would watch music that resonated within me that were all in English, and that just kind of inspired me to learn the language a bit more, which is, I know I have an accent, but I do think that that's why I'm a lot better at English than I would normally be if I hadn't found all of these things that excited me to know what they were talking about, you know? That feels, I don't know if I made any sense, but...
That is totally okay. But talking about like finding yourself in a different language, how has the experience of like being a multilingual speaker or just the experience and relationship with language has affected your design process or practice? I think this is something that I could start off, and this is the last question that we'll be going through our panel conversation and also connecting you guys to the idea of our workshop a little bit more. Part of my experience with how language has impacted my design practice, I feel like because I'm a multilingual speaker, I am much more interested into typesetting or like designing for multilingual speaker or like different audiences, not just the English audience. I'm interested in designing for a bigger community, and sometimes that means creating a design system or like an identity system that could be more flexible and encapsulate more changes or differences in writing system. I feel like at the same time, because of how different the writing system in English, which is like, you know, alphabets, and Chinese characters, which is these like modular parts, not exactly modular. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it's like a different writing system that influenced a lot of East Asian typography. And I feel like because I have an understanding of Chinese typography and also English typesetting because of the education here at CCA, it also led to a lot more like expansive exploration in terms of visual culture and visual representation in typography itself. Like I'm able to explore sometimes the English alphabet or just how to like present a design in English layout, but taking on inspiration from like Chinese writing, calligraphy, writing style. I think that's something that has been really interesting and has been pretty impactful in especially my last few years here at CCA. So yeah, that's my experience with language and design.
Okay, yeah, I can go. So I think it kind of manifests itself for me in like the smaller things. I recently designed a typeface that was like multilingual. It supports Vietnamese and English recently, but that was 2 years ago actually. But yeah, I feel like I find myself really noticing the white space between letters more than like the kind of black space itself, because then I feel like I find myself really having to notice the leading between the lines because Vietnamese has double accents. So how do I fit all of these parts, and how does it become, you know, readable for an audience? And if people are not really fluent with Vietnamese, can they still speak this? I mean, read this. English is not my first language. So yeah, it kind of shows, I think I noticed all of these details. And then also another thing is English is really common to have hyphenation when you're typesetting. Not really a thing in Vietnamese because it's like a monosyllable language. So all of the words are like less than 8 letters. So it's not very common to use that. So it's kind of little things. When I start designing, I noticed these things, and I feel like I also kind of figured out the language and understand it more deeply by practicing design. And then on like a more macro level, I think kind of these little things kind of influence how you look at your audience, and what if they are multilingual and what if they are not? How would they see your design differently? And it also leads you to think about how different cultural values kind of, they are different. So when people see your design, it could be really different. For example, in China, like Sino-influenced cultures, red is like a good luck symbol, but in the US or like Western culture, it just means no or like stop or like danger. So yeah, it kind of leads you into like thinking about both kind of micro details and macro ideas. I think that's how it worked out for me.
That's really interesting because I feel like being bilingual in design makes me want to move away from language as a whole. I feel like I'm more drawn to working completely visually, like with icons or symbols or maybe movement, in order to get a point across, so that it's more accessible, instead of using language to explain what it is that I'm trying to do. So when you asked that question, I just fully thought about icons and not really typography, because visual language is something that everyone can understand. And I feel like that ties more to our workshop today. Yeah. So that's interesting, right? I didn't even think about language. I thought about the lack thereof.
I think for me, it's less of like how the visual looks, more of because I'm thinking in both languages. I'm thinking about, am I actually communicating what I wanted to say? So it's kind of like like proving? I don't know. Like when I think in Chinese, I have to think a lot. It's like this English translation is actually what I'm trying to say in Chinese. And also like a lot of the wording is much longer in English. So like when I was doing a bilingual editorial design, I was thinking like how I need to condense like the information I needed to add in there. Like it's a lot of thinking internally to make sure that I'm conveying the thing I actually want to say. So I think it's so interesting that we all focus on different things because we're bilingual or multilingual. Yeah, and I think, that ties also to what our workshop is today.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening to our podcast today. I don't know what kind of note we ended on, but it ended somewhere. And I hope it was interesting to listen to us ramble and talk in our very unorganized way. But yeah, I will stop recording first. Thank you.